Hey, this is Michael Bohm with Youth Apologetics Training. Today, we're going to keep going on this series about Wicca and their beliefs, and we're kind of coming to a close here. Today's podcast and in the next few days, I'm going to be talking about how we can reach Wiccans. And isn't that the most important part of all this? It's not really about knowing what they believe, although that is pretty important, I think. But how in the world do we talk to these guys? We want to get them saved. I mean, that's our goal in all this, right? So that's where we're going to be going in the next few days. Today I wanted to kind of recap what we've talked about and pull all these strings together, because I've done a great job of taking all kinds of rabbit trails and exploring around in different nooks and crannies of the whole thing. And I just want to pull it all together and review a little bit. And then we'll jump into a whole pile of mismatched ways of talking to Wiccans. Because I'll tell you what, guys, there is no silver bullet. There's no cut and dry, hey, this is how you do it method of reaching these people. And that kind of goes with all different walks of witnessing, different forms of evangelism. But anyway, let's jump right in. The last, I don't even know how many days I've been talking about this. We've covered many subjects. And so let's try to pull some things together. What have we learned about the Wiccans? And like I've said over and over throughout this study, there's so many different versions of Wicca, it's kind of hard to pin them down. But let's just kind of look at it. First and foremost, they believe that they are do-gooders. They believe in white magic, and so they believe that they're harming nobody. You know, the Wiccan Rede, I've mentioned that many times so far throughout this study, the statement, and in it harm none, do what you will. And I think I might have misquoted that, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The whole idea that if you don't harm anybody, do whatever you want. And that's kind of their motto. Now, do they hold to that 100% of the time? No, they don't. But that's kind of the Wiccan motto. That's their Wiccan Rede. Okay? The point is, they don't try to perform malicious witchcraft. And it still happens. And I wanted to bring that up here really quick. I find it interesting because when I was part of Wicca, that was exactly it. You don't perform malicious witchcraft, but yet there's a subculture of Wiccans that believe it's okay to perform hexes and revenge type witchcraft when it's justified. And then, of course, when it's justified is kind of a gray area too. Like there's examples of all the way up to in times of rape, which, okay, that's pretty bad. That doesn't justify busting out the witchcraft on somebody, but that's how they feel. All the way down to you being misunderstood by your boss or somebody kind of double-crossed you. And so it's okay then all of a sudden to perform a hex on somebody. The Holy Book of Women's Mysteries says this. It says that if women hex rapists or others who commit crimes of patriarchy, there is no divine retribution. She gives instructions on how to perform a righteous hex for violent criminals only, and when you know, not just think that someone has harmed you. But I have heard mentioning of hexing being done between witches for more mundane reasons, over quarrels about money, for example, or to gain retribution against an employer who was unsympathetic. Okay, just thought I'd read that to you. That's interesting. All right, summing that up. Generally, they're into non-malicious witchcraft. Moving on, they exalt or / sometimes worship nature. We talked about that. They're really into exalting and well, a lot of cases, worshiping nature. They really, many of them believe that nature is part of the Mother Earth, and Mother Earth is basically part of the goddess. So in worshiping and preserving the environment, you are actually honoring and worshiping the goddess. And since we're talking about the goddess, let's talk about the goddess and the god, sometimes referred to as the Lord and the Lady, or the god, the horned god and the goddess. All right? Many different forms around that idea, but they believe that the horned god and the goddess make up, as a composite, the one. And the one is like the all-encompassing God that really controls and reigns over everything. Now, even that is so loose because there's so many different sects of Wicca that, you know, some Wiccans are very agnostic / atheistic. They don't even believe in a real literal God and goddess, but more of like these are thought forms that help you harness certain energies that are innate in you and in nature that enable you to manipulate the world around you. All right, so that whole idea of the God and goddess that is so loose. Some Wiccans truly believe in a literal God and goddess, supreme beings that make up a composite being called the One. Kind of like, oh boy, don't take this too far, but the concept, the Christian concept of the Trinity, 3 persons, 1 God, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit. 3 distinct persons that make up God. Interesting. Yeah, it causes me to twitch sometimes when I think about it. There's moments when I think I've got the Trinity under control, and then just moments later I'm like, nope, don't get it. It's such a hard concept to get your brain around. But likewise, they have this God and goddess that make up the one. Anyway, many Wiccans are pantheistic. Pan means all, theistic, God, right? So they're all is God and God is all. That's kind of a saying of pantheism. And many Wiccans subscribe to that. Also, many Wiccans subscribe to animism. Animism is that whole idea that inanimate objects and animals and, plants, nature itself, have spirits. So your tree in the front yard might have a spirit. You might have a sea buckthorn bush in your front yard that produces incredibly tasty berries that are highly nutritious. And you might believe that it has a soul. I don't, but I do like my sea buckthorn bush. Oh boy. You know what I'm saying? They believe that inanimate objects have souls. And that's not all Wiccans, just some. Most Wiccans observe the Sabbats, which are different festivals that happen throughout the year. And generally there's 8 of them. The Wiccans, not all Wiccans celebrate all 8. Some just celebrate 4, some celebrate 6. Nonetheless, there are those Sabbats, those different times throughout the year that they observe, like Samhain, which is kind of their version of Halloween. And if you're a Christian, you probably should think twice about Halloween. Why don't you do your homework on that? I'll probably do a study on Halloween someday. I really don't like Halloween. On Halloween, I kidnap my kids and take them up to that horrible place called Chuck E. Cheese so that I don't have to be home when those kids are knocking on my door. Some people choose to hand out tracts when they come to the door. You know what? I'm not going to judge you, and I am going down a rabbit trail here. Holy smokes. How far have I come? Okay, let's get back to reality here. They observe things like Saturnalia or the winter solstice, Yuletide. Anyway, they have these Sabbats that they go through year-round. Check out that teaching on it if you missed it. It's one of those teachings that may or may not be useful in witnessing to a Wiccan. But nonetheless, I know a lot of you guys out there, you know, you're listening to this, A, to learn how to witness to, but to them, but B, you also just want to know, like, what do they believe? So anyway, it's kind of a useful podcast in that sense. And well, anyway, many different forms of witchcraft, different flavors of witches observe those sabbats in different forms. And so we'll cover that in different series in the future as we go forward and learn about different religions. But anyway, just understanding those 8 sabbats, that will come up again and again. And it's also interesting because you're going to find out how or when to pray. Because unlike the Wiccans, who do, for the most part, pretty nice forms of witchcraft, these other groups that observe these sabbats do some extremely dark and wicked things on these sabbats. So be aware of them. And if you just simply can't wait for me to get into this stuff someday in the future, because it's going to be a little ways down the road before I jump into different forms of witchcraft, you might even want to go online and do a little studying. Try to do it from a Christian perspective, because if you end up on some of these darker websites, guys, I'm afraid you might see images you'd rather not see. Keep those eyes clean, okay? Anyway, wow, I'm just going on and on here. I think I'm going to stop right here. Tomorrow we'll finish doing this review on what Wicca teaches. I just wanted to sum it all up really quickly because I've gone down so many rabbit trails throughout this series that I want to pull everything together. And then we're going to talk about a bunch of ways that people have found effective when witnessing the Wiccans. And that's what it's really all about. So tomorrow we'll finish reviewing, and then we'll get into the good stuff. All right. Come out to the website, useapologeticstraining.com, and leave comments and questions. By the way, there are some podcasts on my website that you cannot get on sermon audio. The website exclusive podcasts. If you click on that link, you'll find some guys there that you won't find anywhere else. Anyway, with that, I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. But anyway, let's jump right in. The last, well, I don't even know how many days I've been talking about this. We've covered many subjects, and so let's try to pull some things together. What have we learned about the Wiccans? And like I've said over and over throughout this, today I wanted to kind of recap what we've talked about and pull all these strings together, because I've done a great job of taking all kinds of rabbit trails and exploring around in different nooks and crannies of the whole thing. And I just want to pull it all together and review a little bit. And then we'll jump into a whole pile of mismatched ways of talking to Wiccans. Because I'll tell you what, guys, there is no silver bullet. There's no cut and dry, hey, this is how you do it method of reaching these people. And that kind of goes with all different walks of witnessing, different forms of evangelism. Hey, this is Michael Bohm with Youth Apologetics Training. Today, we're going to keep going on this series about Wicca and their beliefs, and we're kind of coming to a close here. Today's podcast and in the next few days, I'm going to be talking about how we can reach Wiccans. And isn't that the most important part of all this? It's not really about knowing what they believe, although that is pretty important, I think. But how in the world do we talk to these guys? We want to get them saved. I mean, that's our goal in all this, right? So that's where we're going to be going in the next few days.